Welcome back to FD, where today we're running through 11 players who went from the very top of the game down to the very bottom. Goalkeeper, Paddy Kenny. Remembered more fondly as everyone's starting stopper on FIFA Street rather than a top-class goalkeeper, Paddy Kenny made over 650 career appearances between the sticks, with 67 of those coming in the Premier League. Unfortunately, the top flight wasn't a joyous experience, as he conceded 1.6 goals a game, got relegated with Sheffield United, and narrowly avoided the drop with QPR in 2012. Now 39, Kenny spent the rest of his professional career in the Championship and League One, before a surprise move to Maltby Main, who play in the 9th tier of English football. The Miners reside in the glamorous sights of Rotherham, not far from Kenny's hometown Halifax, and he made his debut for the side in August. Unfortunately for the keeper, he lasted just over 10 minutes before getting injured, and Maine lost 1-0. Defender, Lloyd Samuel. Starting off our stellar backline is Lloyd Samuel, a Trinidad defender who broke through into Aston Villa's first team in the 01-02 season, becoming a constant figure in the Villains' defence, which earned him an England call-up in 2004. The best it got for Samuel was being an unused substitute against Sweden and an Intertoto Cup. But he did enjoy a renaissance in Iran, where he earned somewhat of a dubious nickname, the Black Diamond. 4 seasons in Iran saw him lift the title and a domestic cup, as well as witnessing a sheep get his head chopped off at the training ground. To the delight of football fans across the country, Samuel returned to England in 2017, joining non-league club Egerton FC alongside former Premier League striker Nathan Ellington. Not searching for a final payday, Samuel is more than happy returning to his humble roots. Defender, Titus Bramble. Affectionately known as Titus Shambles by the Toon Army, the big centre-half spent 13 seasons in England's top flight, with the majority who had unfortunate pleasure of watching him try to defend wondering how he managed to have such a career. Despite playing for both sides of the Tyne-Wear derby in arguably the worst periods of their recent history, Bramble somehow never got relegated, and even won Player of the Year in an abnormal good season for Wigan. This prestigious award, also won by superstars such as Charles Ndzogbia and Paul Shana, didn't see the defender get an England call-up, although he did enjoy a glittering spell with the under-21s in the early 2000s. His last professional appearance was in 2013, and after 4 years without a club, joined Stowmarket Town as a player coach. Manager Rick Andrews went on to say, "From what I've seen in training, he's certainly very comfortable at this level. Perhaps he should have been there this whole time." Defender, Paul Konchesky. The first and unfortunately not the last Billericay Town player on this team sheet, Konchesky slots into centre-half in RXI, vacating his usual left-back berth where he was actually a decent Premier League level player at several clubs. Having spent 13 years in the English top flight, Konchesky can count himself unlucky to have not won any silverware, despite never playing for a remotely great team, and no, Hodgson's Liverpool doesn't count. The fullback was a runner-up in the FA Cup for West Ham, when he scored in the final, a runner-up in the Europa League where he featured 13 times for Fulham, and left Leicester the year before they won the league. The Londoners' last professional club was Gillingham, and despite opening a pie and mash shop, he still wanted the thrill of football every week. Billericay Town ended up as his final destination, playing alongside Jamie O'Hara in the Isthmian League Premier Division, before hanging up his boots for good. Midfielder, Jermaine Pennant. Once upon a time, Jermaine Pennant scored a hat-trick on his full league debut, and even started in a Champions League final for Liverpool in 2007. Now he's at Billericay Town, singing R. Kelly's World's Greatest in the dressing room before every match. A significant step down, to say the least. But the 34-year-old seemed content with the quieter life in Essex, claiming he had offers from top clubs in Turkey and Cyprus, but chose Glenn Taplin's Billericay as an opportunity to develop into a coach and potentially a manager once he hangs up his boots. It's a stark contrast to the Premier League, but the winger is still pocketing a pretty penny in the 7th tier of English football, with the acquisitions of him, O'Hara and Konchesky causing the non-league side to shell out over 30k a week in wages, almost 6 times higher than the table toppers Dulwich Hamlet. Midfielder, Edgar Davids. Edgar Davids, nicknamed the Pitbull by Louis van Gaal for his aggressive style of play, made his name in the Netherlands playing for Eredivisie giants Ajax. The defensive midfielder made over 100 appearances for the Amsterdam side before bolstering his footballing resume with stints at Milan, Juventus, Barcelona and Inter. Davids moved to England in 2005 to join Martin Jol's Spurs. The goggle-wearing Dutchman made 40 appearances in the Premier League and became a fan favourite among the White Hart Lane faithful. After 18 months, his Premier League career was over, but his residency in North London clearly wasn't. In 2012, Davids made the alarming decision to become player-manager of Barnet, and it didn't go so well. He failed to save them from relegation, as the Bees fell out of the Football League, and he stepped down as manager in 2014. Barnet fans claimed that the 72 times capped Netherlands international lost his head and was too focused on being a celebrity and not on coaching the non-league side. Evident when he gave himself the number 1 shirt. Midfielder, Stilian Petrov. Stan the Man may have played against some of Europe's top clubs in his time as captain of both Celtic and Aston Villa, but he has even taken part in the harsh side of the game too. After his transfer from CSK Sofia, Petrov struggled to settle in Glasgow, isolated by the fact he couldn't speak English. With the club failing to provide the proper support, it took the kindness of a stranger and a stint working in a chip van before he grasped the common tongue. This stranger was Brian Wilson, a security guard at Parkhead who noticed the unhappy 20-year-old one day after training, prompting him to take action. Wilson and his wife owned a chip van, employing Petrov in his spare time, who quickly learned how to take orders from hungry Scotsmen. 10 major honours with Celtic, Wembley heartbreak with Villa and a successful battle with leukaemia eventually led Stilian to non-league football with Whitechapel Wanderers, for whom he donned his customary number 19 shirt and scored a trademark goal against Aston Manor as they lifted the Central Warwickshire over-35's Division 1 trophy. As Chris would say, Stan is still the man. Midfielder, George Best. The only Ballon d'Or winner in this 11, George Best's rise and fall is well documented, as is his journeyman career he embarked after leaving Old Trafford. He played for 10 clubs in just 9 years, from Fort Lauderdale Strikers to Brisbane Lions, with spells at some lower league teams dotted in between. One of his first forays into non-league football was at Dunstable Town, where he played in a friendly as a favour to their new manager, Barry Fry. These types of appearances are usual for players in their 30s, but remarkably, Best was just 27 years old, while he was beating part-timers for fun. A decade later, Best's footballing ability was not only hindered by his age, but also by his alcoholism. His career was practically finished, but he did treat some of his own Northern Irishmen with one last appearance, and his only competitive club game in the country of his birth. It was for Tobermoor United in the Irish Cup, featuring in a 7-0 loss to Ballymena, where he struggled to influence the game in any fashion. The result didn't matter though. The packed-out crowd were there to witness a legend, who gracefully departed shortly after to Los Angeles to meet his girlfriend. Typical Georgie. Forward, Henrik Larsson. The King of Kings, as Chris calls him every other 5 minutes, had a career befitting of the name, as he was voted as Sweden's best ever player, won the European Golden Boot, 7 league titles and a Champions League to cap it all off. Some players would have called it a day, but before his shocking managerial career kicked off, he couldn't resist the temptation of playing, even in his 40s. First, he made a brief appearance for AF in Sweden's 5th division before registering himself as a player with Högeborg whilst he was assistant manager. Larsson went on to play in 2 official games for the club where his career started, even featuring alongside his son, who was 15 at the time. In typical Larsson fashion, the Swede netted in a friendly in what was his last game in professional football, at the age of 44. Forward, Jimmy Greaves. Like Georgie Best, Greaves was a once-in-a-generation talent who sadly succumbed to the bottle. A lethal striker in his day, Greaves still holds the record for the highest amount of goals in the English top flight, 74 ahead of Alan Shearer, and was an inaugural inductee in English football's Hall of Fame. An ill-fated move to Milan aside, where he still scored 9 in 12, Greaves stayed put in England, with a reluctancy to move away from London the reason as to why he turned down opportunities to work with Brian Clough, and something which nearly cost him his Rossoneri move in the first place. The last 2 years of his professional career were spent at West Ham, and despite initial promise, fell into deep alcoholism. Greaves admitted to drinking on average 20 pints and a bottle of vodka every single day, and subsequently endeavoured into non-league football due to his lack of fitness. In the end, Greaves turned out for Brentwood, Chelmsford City and Barnet, where he picked up their Player of the Year award. His last club was Woodford Town before retiring at 40 years old. Forward, Didier Drogba. Okay, we're absolutely stretching with this one, as Phoenix Rising are technically a professional club, but given that they play in the second tier of the USA's footballing pyramid and are unable to get promoted, we're placing Drogba up top. Signing his first professional contract at 21, Drogba's path to greatness was an enduring one, joining Chelsea via Marseille at 26 years of age, where he'd become a Premier League icon despite managing over 11 goals a season just 3 times. As his career began to wind down, the Ivorian became somewhat of a journeyman, playing in China, Turkey and eventually North America, bagging 21 goals in 33 games for Montreal Impact. Loving his time in North America and seeing the growing popularity of soccer in the continent, Drogba decided to invest into newly rebranded Phoenix Rising alongside stars such as Diplo, Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy fame, and LA Dodgers pitcher Brandon McCarthy. The striker still wanted to play though, and currently captains the side, scoring for fun at the ripe old age of 39.
So I hope you guys liked that video. Let us know what you thought in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed that, why not check out the video on screen right now? I'm sure it is great. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe.